Hola, soy Lau Hernández y te doy la bienvenida a mi canal de Happy Pattern. Tuve la oportunidad de hablar con Shannon McNab sobre cómo los diseñadores y artistas tenemos total control de nuestros procesos y somos quienes decidimos al final qué hacer con la experiencia que estamos viviendo. Shannon es artista y mentora. Además de licenciar sus diseños con marcas en diversos nichos, es la mente detrás de la plataforma Sketch Design Repeat, la cual contiene diversos programas para ayudar a diseñadores a desarrollar su portafolio y empezar a mostrar sus diseños. Suscríbete al canal y dale a la campanita para que recibas las notificaciones cuando subo un video. Comparte el video y dale me gusta para que más personas disfruten el contenido de este canal. Y si tienes alguna pregunta, déjala en los comentarios. Yo te responderé tan pronto como pueda. Today we will be talking to Shannon McNab. Hello, Shannon.
Hi.
I'm so excited she's here.
Me too.
How are you?
I am very good.
Shannon is a surface pattern designer and a licensed artist, and she runs Sketch Design and Repeat in her own design studio. She's so lovely. I had the honor to meet her in Sortex in 2020, and I want to interview her to talk about how designers have the total control of their design process. So welcome, Shannon, to the Happy Pattern channel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we had an opportunity to chat.
Shannon, I want you to talk about your career, your surface pattern design career, and tell us a bit about you.
So I learned surface pattern design actually in graduate school. That's where I first fell in love with patterns, but I didn't immediately jump into surface design when I got out of school. I went to be a graphic designer, and so I did that for several years, had a corporate job that I hated, and started designing patterns on the side for digital scrapbookers and putting them on Etsy. And this was like way back in the day when Etsy was not the behemoth that it is now, right? It was back when things were easier on Etsy. And so that kind of like slowly snowballed into me eventually becoming a full-time surface designer in 2016. My first kind of major debut was doing Surtax, which is a art licensing trade show in 2017. And I've been doing trade shows ever since, except obviously not during COVID. And it really kind of catapulted my career. And I just got very specific on the art I needed to make for the companies that I was attracting. And then also wanting to teach because I love to teach. I also have been teaching for years, started on Skillshare and then launched Sketch Design Repeat in 2020.
So you do come from a designer background in the industry.
Yes.
So how was your transition from graphic design to surface pattern design?
So it was a very slow transition. It was definitely not an overnight, like flip the switch kind of thing. So like I said, I was designing kind of like side hustle because I didn't enjoy my day-to-day job. And so I'd come home and design patterns and it was like fun work for me.
Yeah,
right?
I did that. Yeah, I did that.
It's such a great way to kind of ease into, you know, the surface design industry and like decide, do I really want to do this more? And I did that for a couple of years.
Yeah, maybe you begin as a hobby and then you realize you love it. And can this be a career?
Yeah, and it was like, I'm not enjoying my graphic design work as much as I'm enjoying illustration and pattern work. So let's do this. And so basically it was a slow build. I left my corporate job in 2013 and became self-employed at that point. And then it was very much mishmash of whatever graphic design jobs I could get, and then designing my patterns for the digital scrapbook industry primarily. And then couple years later, I was just getting burnt out with how much art I had to create for the digital scrapbook market. And those of you here watching, if you do POD, print on demand sites, it's very similar where you do a lot of artwork, but you don't get that much per item sold. And so it just burnt me out. And so that's when I was like, I want to license my art. And so 2016, the summer was when I was like, okay, let's do this for real. And I made it my full-time job.
So you have been as an employer for yourself for 10 years. So it's not an overnight success.
No, it
That's,
rarely is.
yeah,
Even when people see that, it's like, nope, there's all of that work that goes on behind the scenes for
yeah,
years that
yeah,
most people don't see. Yeah.
yeah. That's something that is important to say because yes, you have a background in design, but you have to learn how to work for yourself, learn how, a lot of things. So yeah, it's not an overnight success. You mentioned also that you were in the graphic designer, you were a graphic designer, but you were not enjoying your job, your daily job. How did you decided that it was the time for you to quit your job?
It was actually it was a combination of things. So my job was so stressful because I worked at Pottery Barn in the email marketing department, and it was the thing that they could affect the quickest. And so it was a highly stressful environment where we had to turn things around really quickly, to the point that I started getting physically sick because of the work.
Yeah,
And
I
so the
can relate.
anxiety, yeah, the anxiety and all of that came from it, it was really hurting my health. And then it was also honestly my husband. He has always earned way more than I have, even when we were, way back in the day when we were two incomes. He's a game designer, and we were in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is the best place to be for game design. So it was basically, we had kind of a heart to heart, and he's like, do it by yourself, do your own thing. I know it's what you want to do, and I will support you. So that was kind of how it happened.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I asked you this because I also had a 9 to 5 job that I didn't enjoy, and I can relate. And I know there is a lot of people that is doing software design design as a hobby, and maybe they want to switch careers. And I want to tell them that yes, it is possible that you can build a career. It will not be an overnight success. It will not be quickly, but if you work and if you learn how to do things, you can definitely grow a career about this, because you do not have to have a degree in surface pattern design. As an artist, I've learned that as an artist, you don't have to have an art degree to have a successful career in this. I do come from an artist career because I studied fashion design in college, but it's a totally different thing from surface pattern design. Even textile design is so different. So yeah,
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you. There are so many people that I hear from who say like, oh, I'm not an artist. I didn't come from an artistic background. Like, it doesn't matter. I have so many student stories that I've heard from in my programs where like they were a, like biology major and were working for like a pharmaceutical company, or like just the most crazy random jobs, but they always wanted to be artistic. There is absolutely nothing saying you have to have a formal art degree to make surface design a full-time business for yourself in the future.
And even if you don't have a degree at all, that you didn't go to college for X and Y, you can totally build a portfolio and learn how to create art, and totally you can build a career out of this. Shannon,
Absolutely.
when you're working on your illustration and patterns, when you are doing your pattern design, your collections or illustration, what is your favorite part of the process? Like the things that you love the most about the process?
So probably there's kind of two parts of the process that I really love. And it's funny, it's kind of like the beginning and the end for me. So like the sketching process to me is really therapeutic, and it's fun to kind of tease out a bunch of different ideas, because I don't necessarily, I used to have one very specific kind of style that I stuck myself in, but as I've grown as an artist, I've really dabbled in a bunch of different things. And so I don't always want to design the same thing. And so that like beginning exploratory process that's the real fun, because then you get to see like kind of what just shows up on the paper. So I like that. And then my favorite part of like the design process is definitely putting patterns together. I think it's just kind of, I have a very left brain. And so like, the organized, methodical kind of stuff, like basically fitting a pattern together like a puzzle is just, I can get lost in the
Me too.
process.
Me
And to
too.
me, that's always,
That's therapeutic for me.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the best part, is when you can just completely lose yourself in what you're doing. Like, that to me is where the magic happens, and where you can tell, like, this is what I enjoy doing, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
me too. Me too.
so
You were talking about this design style, and I love that you say that you experience and then you learn that you can have different styles. You do not have to have one style and you have to stick to it. You can be free, because the major things as being an artist is that you can enjoy being an artist. You don't have to be like this and you cannot turn left or turn right. And I want you to tell us, how do you develop your style or your styles? Because you said that you have multiple styles.
Yeah, so to me, like, there's a lot of myths that go around your design style, and it's something I like to talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'm honestly a firm believer that style is a moving target. So your style will never stop evolving, ever. And that's a great thing, because it means you can always reinvent yourself, and you don't have to stay stuck in something you did 3 years ago that you're no longer feeling. So for me, it's just kind of a journey. So I was, when I started off, 100% in Illustrator, because, you know, like, again, that's another myth. Like, I was told, if you want to be successful, you have to do everything in Illustrator. Totally not true, by the way.
No, not true.
I even did a whole Instagram live talking just about that topic. But so I did that for the first couple of years, and I kind of developed my style. But what happened was, I got bored, because it was just kind of like cookie cutter doing the same thing. And I was just like, I had the need to experiment. And so first started experimenting with a bunch of textures and brushes in Illustrator itself, and then kind of moved on to other mediums. So I got an iPad and used Procreate. I've dabbled in gouache, because there's definitely something special about paint that can't, like, Procreate has gotten close, but there are some, like, things that you can't really replicate exactly. Even just your personal experience of it. Like, there's something special about throwing paint on a paper as opposed to, painting digitally. And so it's just basically trying to do a bunch of different things. And so I feel like my style or styles kind of do this. I definitely have kind of a core thread of certain details that always find themselves in my art. Like colors I always use, like, I like imperfection. I don't like perfect circles or anything. I'd rather much have wonky stuff. So there's those kind of elements that are a thread through all of my work.
That will define that is your design, that is your work.
Exactly. But it doesn't,
if it's two different styles.
Right. But it doesn't have to be just one style. Like, I have it kind of a loose and painterly that's a little bit more sophisticated, and then I have like a lot of cutesy stuff too. Now, I'm not going to pitch the same pieces necessarily to the same companies, but I enjoy making both of them, and both of them can live in my portfolio.
Exactly. One of the things that I try to tell everybody and teach them most is that it doesn't matter how you start drawing or getting your sketches. You can use a variety of techniques. You can paint in gouache and do it in Photoshop. You can do a linear drawing and do it in Illustrator. You can do it in Procreate. You can use Affinity Design. There is a lot of techniques, a lot of art mediums, and you can do what you enjoy. The thing is, what I say is that you have to experiment what you like, because maybe for example, you say you don't like perfect circles, but I do. And I have to experiment with what I like, what works for me, because something that I say is my taste level is not the same as my skill level. And
it's always above.
Yeah. So my skill level is here, and my skill level is here, and my taste level is here. So either I practice to have my skill levels here, and I match it, because I have to develop my own style by analyzing what I like. Okay, in the pieces I like the colors, I like the lines, I like the brushes, I like the texture. So I have to mimic that And when I mimic that, I can develop my own style. But the style will evolve because we will not stay as the same person for the eternity. You will be different tomorrow, and you are evolving your style in your designs, and maybe tomorrow you will like another colors, and that's okay. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and something that I usually tell people is that you don't have to, for if you want to develop your style, you don't have to be romantic about that, because maybe we are, as designer, as licensing artists, we romanticize everything, and you have to sit and drink a cup of coffee, draw about things you like, but maybe that doesn't work for you. That maybe that works for me. So I always say that people have to experiment to see what will work for you. And when you know what worked for you and you experiment with different mediums, different techniques, then you decide what you want to do and the style that you want to develop.
I so agree. Like there is something so important about the experimentation. And I think the key point of what you just said is finding the stuff that you do like, but then also finding the stuff that you don't like and don't enjoy. Like both of those things are equally helpful to me as artists. And I feel like so much we focus on like the what we want to do, the what we like. And it's like, well, don't forget the stuff, like
that
don't ignore
like.
the stuff that you don't, because that's also very beneficial for you to, continue to develop your style. And I mean, we are in a commercial art space, and so understanding both halves is so beneficial for you in your career.
Exactly. And when you decide, for example, one thing that I learned is that when you decide what style you want to pursue, you have to start learning, because what I say, your skill level is not the same as your taste level. So if your skill level is not the same, you have to learn. You have to experiment, you have to learn. And now we have the technologies, and you can learn in Skillshare, in YouTube, in Google, and you have to keep learning. Sometimes I have students that say, "Oh, I want to learn Illustrator, but it's too difficult because it gets stuck in this and that." And I say, yes, but if you practice and you practice and you practice and you practice, then you will master Illustrator and you will be developing your own process. You Absolutely. have to be learning how things will work for you, because Shannon is a teacher and Shannon will tell you her experience. I am a teacher and I'm gonna tell you my experience. But at the end, you have to develop your own experience.
And I mean, as teachers, we all know, like, everyone learns differently, everyone works differently. And so that's what I love about just kind of the boom of the online learning space, especially for artists, because there are so many different points of view that it'll help so many artists resonate with certain things. Like, I mean, I'm obviously super planner, love Airtable, everything organized, and that really works very well for some artists, for organizing their portfolio and all that, but it doesn't work for everybody. And so having someone else with a different approach come along and share their experience is, still beneficial.
And it will give you a different idea. And you can take idea from everybody, and then you decide how you will do it, how you're gonna do it. I want you to talk us about your design process and how you decide. This is an important question. How do you decide how many motifs you will have in your design, in your collection, and how many designs you will have in a collection? Because that's a topic I want you to debunk.
Well, so I have very strong opinions about building collections because I feel like so much of the advice skews towards the fabric space, which is large collections with lots of patterns. And my experience, especially at trade shows, talking with a lot of different companies that are not just in the fabric space, is they typically don't have the budgets for massive collections. And so breaking collections up into smaller bits, whether it's you like to design in large collections, so you do them as like, a couple different groupings, or if you don't like large collections, just do, a grouping of 2 or 3 patterns, and that can a lot of times be enough. As far as how I design, like the process of like how I decide, it really kind of starts with the idea I have for the pattern. So it really depends on how complex I kind of envision, especially the hero, because that's usually where I start. It could be anywhere from, you know, there have been times when I've done one motif, but I do it a bunch of different times. So like I have a candy cane piece in my portfolio I made this year, and it's just, you know, like a candy cane, but I drew the candy cane like 12 times. And, you know, there's small details that are changed in each one. And so it makes it, you know, unique instead of just having the same one candy cane rotated, and, you know, it just makes it more special. But then obviously on the other spectrum, like I have some florals where, I mean, probably 30, 40, maybe even sometimes 50 motifs. And, you know, probably 5 or 6 will be big. And then, you know, scale is very important with patterns. And so a lot of them will be simpler, smaller little doodles that I can just kind of place in to add a little bit more pizzazz. But yeah, like it runs the gamut for me.
Exactly. What I understand that following you, that you don't need a bunch of designs. You can do with your collection what you want. Maybe, for example, I have a collection that has 12 designs. But for example, if I'm gonna show that collection to a fabric company, I will show them the 12 designs. But if I want to show that collection to a stationery company, I will show them 3 designs. It's the same collection, but I am putting them in a sheet differently. And I'm showing the collection to the buyers, to the prospective, differently. There is one collection that I will show with a pattern with an illustration for a greeting card or for party goods. But maybe that collection for fabric will have 6 designs. Because in my understanding, when I started 5 years ago, I did like my first 3, 4, 5 collections, I did like the 18 designs, and I was like exhausted. I was like, no, I can't do this. It was hard for me. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. And then I heard you talking about you can do whatever you want. You can do the number of designs that you want in a collection. Maybe you want 1 design, and your collection is 1 design, and maybe you have an illustration. And then I was like, oh, I can do that. That's why I wanted you to talk about that you can do whatever you want, because it's your career. It's your design process, it's your business, it's your career, it's your project. So yes, you can hear everybody, you can hear our advices, but at the end, you will do what works for you. You will do whatever you want.
And I think the key, and I mean, this is definitely something like, I mean, I've been along on most of your journey, I feel like, kind of as a spectator, and I've loved watching you grow as an artist. And what you said that was so important was the way you pitched the same designs to 2 different companies in 2 different markets was different. And that's definitely something you learn with, you know, time and experience. And that to me is the most important thing. Because, you know, not every piece you create is going to be right for every company you approach, and not every collection in its whole entirety is going to be appropriate. And so that to me is exactly the point. You can design however you want, however much art you want, for whatever markets you want, but you do need to be strategic when it comes to pitching it.
Exactly strategic. For example, I have a floral collection, and that floral collection has illustration and also has patterns. So if I'm gonna show it to a party company, I'm gonna show them this, and that. But if I'm gonna show that to a fabric company, then I'm gonna show the other ones, because I'm gonna show an illustration to a fabric company. That doesn't make sense. But you have to be strategic for everything that you design. So yeah, that's something that I like about this industry. Shannon, can you mention one particular tip you have for designers that fell in love with this career and decided that maybe they would do this as a hobby, or they want to build a career out of this like you did? 10 years ago, 8 years ago, or like I did 5 years ago?
So, I mean, there's so many things I could say here, but I think the one thing that continually comes up in my conversations with newer artists is they feel so stuck and like not ready to begin. But to me, I've always found if you can be a little brave and just freaking start, you know, even if you have 5 pieces in your portfolio, reach out to one company, see how that feels, see if you get any feedback, actually taking action. To me, that's what keeps you motivated. Now, of course, obviously you reach out to companies and a lot of them you won't hear back from, and that's normal, but
Exactly.
it's really about actually starting that taking that first step, because you can stay in art making mode forever and not ever put yourself out there. And I feel like a lot of artists do that, and then when they finally do and they're like, well, I have all this art, why am I not seeing traction?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they've been doing it for a month where they've reached out to like 3 companies. Well, that's not enough. So if you can get into the habit early on, putting yourself out there, and again, being brave, because it is not easy, it's not comfortable.
No.
You know, if you
No.
can kind of build that muscle,
It's hard.
it is one of the most important pieces of this industry, is really kind of getting that thick skin developed, because you will have to continually put yourself out there. And those that do that more, those are the people who are more successful, because they're willing to put in that uncomfortable work.
Yeah, one of the things that you said is really important, that people needs to begin, because maybe they put themselves in the mode that they have to make art. And no, you have to start and keep making art at the same time that you are exposing yourself and contacting clients. Elizabeth asked me this question, and I told her that maybe I started too soon, because when I started pitching in 2018, I was like, nobody is responding me, or people are saying that, thank you, your designs are cute, but no. Thank you, your designs are colorful, but no. And I was like frustrated because people was not getting me the correct answers. But then I understand that, yeah, I start when I had to start, because I am developing that muscle. And it's not easy when you have a no for an answer. It's easier when you have any answer, like they don't answer you at all, like you hear like crickets, because you say maybe they didn't receive the email, maybe the email got lost, maybe anything. But when they say no, I was like, oh! And then I learned that it's not personal. They are not saying I'm a bad artist, I'm not a bad person, I'm not doing it wrong. It doesn't work for them at this moment.
Exactly.
And this is something that I've been learning that since like 3-4 years ago. And it still hurts, but it hurts less, because I understand that they are people. This week, I received an email from a company saying like, oh, your art at this moment is not working for us, but we will keep you in our files in case something comes up, or if a licensing deal can happen between your company and ours. And I was like, oh my God. I was like crying. And my husband told me like, now they are answering you. Like 2 years ago, anybody answered you. Now you are receiving answers from people. So you're in a good place now. He was like, oh, let me think positive like you. So yeah. If you will have to start over, what would you do differently in your surface pattern design career, or your career as a designer?
So I kind of want to say like 2 different things. So on the one hand, I don't really regret anything I've done, even the mistakes that I've made, because to me, I always learn way more from my mistakes than I ever do from my win.
That's true.
Yeah. So like, I really don't necessarily regret anything that's happened in my career. But like, if I had to go back and, whisper in Shannon's ear, here are some things, you could know about the future of your career. One is probably not every piece of advice you hear is something you should take.
Exactly. That's a good one.
Yeah, like all of the advice we hear, it usually comes from a very good place of someone trying to help, an agent, a veteran artist, whoever, teachers like Lau and I, right? It always comes from a place of wanting to help, but not every piece of advice works for every single artist. And so there's definitely some pieces of advice that I took on early in my career that didn't really serve me. And it took me a couple of years to realize it. And that had an effect, like on either my art making or how I was targeting companies or whatever, that could have changed some things positively if I had stopped thinking that that was something I had to do sooner. That's probably the number one thing that I wish I could go back and tell myself.
Okay, yeah. I think the same that I was saying, that at the end is your design process, is your career, is your business, is your project. At the end, you can hear everything that we say, the advice that we give you, because it definitely comes from a place from we wanted to help you. We wanting you to have a career, to build a career, but at the end, you will take what serves for you, because not everything that we will say, it will work for everybody, because we are so different and we are in different situations, in different realities. Because yes, we love surface pattern design. We come from, for example, you come from a 9-to-5 job that we hate, but I cannot tell you to quit your job. I cannot simply say, oh, you have to quit your job and be happy being an artist. That will not work, because I don't know your situation, your financial situation. I cannot tell everybody, oh, you will be rich designing art. And no, because I don't know your reality. So absolutely. I think that I agree with you. You cannot take all advices. And if you do hear them, you have to analyze what will work for you and what will not. What will not. Because at the beginning of my career, I was doing everything that everybody says. And then I realized, like, having X number of colors will not help me. Having X number of designs will not help me. Having an X number of collection. You have to have 100 designs to start pitching. You have to have 100 designs to go to a trade show. And I was like, 100, I don't have 10. So
right.
Yeah.
And that can be some of the hardest things. And I mean, you know me, I love busting myths, and have a mini class about it and everything, where it's the biggest detriment to artists is sometimes listening to that advice and seeing it as truth as opposed to just advice, just someone's opinion.
Exactly.
And it can keep
Or the other one that I wrote an article for the sketch design and repeat, the income streams. Oh, you can have different income streams. Yes, it's true, but you cannot have them all at once. Yes. They will not
and
work
expect to make a boatload of money immediately.
No.
And, yes.
I tried them all, believe me, and they didn't work. None of them worked, but I know why they didn't work. I'm not saying that, oh, they don't work, don't do it. No, I'm not saying that. So read the article.
I loved when you pitched that to us, because I mean, you know me, I'm very like, yes, be strategic, and so in alignment with the other article that I wrote about POD sites, where it's like doing it the right way as opposed to, and again, that's my also opinion about the right way to do it.
You can do them, but because they do work. But the thing is that they don't work magically. You cannot have an Etsy shop and they will work magically, and you will set it up and then you forget about it and then everything will come magically. No, you have to work on things. You have to analyze, you have to investigate, you have to learn. Things don't come magically. You have to do your part. And if you do your part, you will have results. And sometimes, let me say, sometimes you do your part and you don't see results. And that's okay too. So
but
yes,
there's information you can take, like from everything you tried, and okay, why didn't that work? Or, you know, what can I do differently? Like, there's still so much to gain from trying things. Even if, you know, you fail, there's so much to be gained from understanding how that process went and how you can make improvements to what you do in the future.
Exactly. As you say, you learn more from your mistakes than from your wins. I'm learning this now, that you learn from the journey and not from the final destination.
Yeah, there is no final destination.
Exactly.
Like,
there
once
is
you
a
get to your goal,
romantic,
there's another goal.
yeah, exactly. There's a romanticizing say that people say, that is, you have to enjoy the journey and nothing about the destination. That's beautiful. But when you have to do it and you have to live it, that's the difficult thing. It's true, you have to enjoy it, but it's not easy to enjoy.
No,
it's not easy.
No, it's not. Yeah, the goal is the destination, and then the journey is the steps you take to get there. And yeah, I think so much, and I mean, I'm guilty of this too. Like, I'm a big fan of goal setting, and so I'm always thinking into the future and what comes next and all that. But it is so important to try and stay present, at least on occasion, you know, and understand where you're at. And one of my favorite things to do is like look back a few months or a few years at where I was and the journey I've taken in that amount of time, and just be grateful for everything I've done and all the things I've learned.
I saw this that
so
you
motivating.
are putting in your stories, like, this week I'm grateful for this, and that. And that's so important, because you are present and you are aware of the things that happen this week that that gets you where you are and will get you where you want to be. Shannon, tell me one word that will represent your success in the industry or your niche.
Well, so I definitely consider more myself like kind of an educator and mentor now than an artist. I mean, obviously I still do my art and all of that. And so much of my focus right now is on supporting artists and making their lives better. And so if I had to sum that up in one word, it would be impact. Like, I would say I'm a good artist, but I also don't think I'm a great artist. There's a lot of artists who are way more talented than I am, but I feel like I do have a talent to teach and to support others in their own journeys. And so, like, what drives me is trying to improve the lives of artists, you know, through the initiatives that we do at Sketch Design Repeat, you know, with the blog team and our industry survey, and doing as much as I can to elevate the industry. Because surface design is a fairly new genre of art, honestly. And I am kind of hoping that as it grows in awareness, because I mean, how many times have we told someone we're a surface designer and they're like, what the heck is that, right? Is that eventually it'll be like graphic design. Or they'll just be like, oh yeah, surface design, I know what you're talking about, right?
My family, when I tell them, oh, I'm a surface pattern designer. In Spanish, is diseñador de estampados para superficies. They say, like, what did you do? You're not a fashion designer. You study fashion. You're not doing clothes and things. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
What I tell them, I'm a textile designer. They understand more, because many people think that textile design is designing the graphics that goes into the textiles and not the textile itself. That's one of the things that I debunk a lot, that is not the same. Textile design, textile engineering, and surface pattern design, it's not the same. But yeah, like, it's a fairly new career in the whole world, but in the Spanish speaking community is totally new. It's totally new. Like,
and there's a lot of places like the Spanish community where, again, it is very new. I mean, I have students from all around the world, and a lot of them will come to me and say, like, I'm the only one in my area that knows what this is, like Germany and Sweden, that are just like, this isn't really a thing yet. And I feel like the more artists who find surface design and the more we talk about it, to me, it will grow the community that understands what it is. And to me, that will do nothing but benefit service designers, because I know one of the things that a lot of artists in our space here is like, it's so crowded. Well,
It's not crowded.
It's not crowded. There is literally, to me, room for everybody, because everyone has a different skill set and different client list and, you know, design style and all of that. So there's space for everyone. But even more important is, again, the more people who understand what surface design is, the more opportunities there will be for us to work
For
with
everybody.
companies and people to get our art onto more products.
Yeah, exactly. Because maybe before it was art for products, but now it's surface pattern design, because you can have your patterns and your illustration in products. So yes. Like, thank you, Shannon, for this interview. I am so glad to have you here and have you talk your experience in the industry to all the Spanish-speaking community. I am going to put your information about Sketch Designer Repeat and your courses and the survey in the description of the video below.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about this, and I love talking to you, Lau. You're definitely one of my favorite students, so I'm so glad you reached out.
Espero que hayas disfrutado el video. Recuerda compartir el video y darle me gusta. Si no eres parte de la comunidad, suscríbete al canal y sígueme en Instagram para que estés al tanto de todo lo que The Happy Parent tiene para ti.